recently refreshed BMW 3 Series received its mid-cycle refresh for the 2023 model year. The 3 Series is essentially a religion among businessmen and women everywhere. The 3 Series, at least here in the United States, starts in the mid to low 40s. This 330i with M Sport package and a couple other nice features is well equipped at about $50,000. This car has new front and rear fascias, but thankfully the base 3 Series has not been spoiled. It looks fairly handsome. I do think this is one of the better executive looking sedans, particularly in this blue over tan, or as Mark likes to call it, blue over Werther's Originals. From the interior side of things, it's largely unchanged from 2019, which means you have good door storage, window controls, seat controls, and your steering wheel is essentially a carryover. These seats with the M Sport package are comfortable, they are heated. You can fit behind yourself if you don't have this in a full gangster lean, which means you can use this as your only car. You can haul your family and business associates around in this car, and the trunk is still very, very usable. The big change is gone as iDrive 7, and in its place is iDrive 8. We beat this horse to death. It is less usable than iDrive 7. You don't have physical HVAC controls. This is a less intuitive design than iDrive 7 was. The interior in this car is still quiet. You still have good usability. BMW is the master in this space of a good mix of futuristic screens and controls while a very usable interior space. But with that, I think it's time for us to head into the shop and put this thing up on the lift.
The BMW 330i sedan, that's right, your hearing is not broken. This is not an SUV. So let's cover the pros and cons of what this is from the mechanical part. This is built on BMW's car architecture, which is scaled out across their SUVs and cars. And the foundation of it is rear-wheel drive first. It's a rear-wheel drive platform that they can scale out to all-wheel drive from cars to SUVs, and it's always rear biased. The other part that they put into it is weight balance. The cross balance corner to corner is very good, and the front to rear distribution is about 50-50. And while that may not be optimal for a supercar, sports car, for a street car, having that neutral balance and weight gives it very good driving characteristics. It doesn't, at the limit, we're talking like 7/10 to all the way to 10/10, it doesn't exhibit crazy understeer, and it doesn't go completely sideways depending on the BMW you get and how they have it tuned. And this is different from pretty much every other car in this category, right? A4, Lexus ES, TLX, when you get to the 8, 9, 10/10, even the Genesis, for example, they tend to understeer. They tend to push more than oversteer. So they try to bake some good handling dynamics in here, but the negative part is it's very numb. It's a very numb driving experience. You feel absolutely nothing, and that's what most people want from like a luxury good, even at this price point. Now with the M Sport package, they finally added a limited slip differential in the back. It's not just an open diff that's being controlled by brake torque vectoring. So you have that if you choose that, and if you go to the M package, then it stiffens up the suspension. It does have adaptive dampers, and most of the suspension is all aluminum. Their strut in BMWs is not like a traditional strut. It's more of like a multi-link, and then the rear is a multi-link. So you do get better handling. And if that's what you value, then obviously BMW is your car. They have active shutters in the front for aerodynamics to give you increased fuel economy. They've done a facelift on the front and rear part of the cars as usual, but mostly the 3 Series is the same. But we're gonna take this for a drive and talk about the pros and cons of that. Jack, tell me something. Is the sedan dead now, officially?
Well, Mark, BMW has been building 3 Series since well before I was born, and this is, in my opinion, even without the B58.
Well, it's a B40.
Yeah, it's a B40. It's 10 less.
Yeah.
Is still a good car, man. I mean, in many ways, I prefer this to the X3. I still think sedans drive better than SUVs, and BMW still puts money into the places they care. It's just, it's a hard sell to a lot of families when they can, for $50,000, can get an SUV that is bigger and can fit more crap in it and do everything this can do for the most part, while having more space and more usability.
I get one thing too is that the world does not revolve around the United States and our culture, right? So there's other places on the planet that sedans are important and have more functional purpose than it does here. I just think from what everybody wants now, that all the money is going into these like compact SUVs or like SUVs that have replaced this. And I think because cars have gotten so much better, this has fallen more into the background. I remember when I was younger and I'd read Car and Driver, it was like every 3 Series was like, the 3 Series is out. It could have been like the garbage can one, and people were all excited by it. Now I don't feel that level of enthusiasm for this car that used to be there.
The G20 Series 3 Series is not the same car that the E90 was, or the E46. It isn't that enthusiast car that people are tripping over themselves for. But in this new world where everything's electromechanical, you don't feel a whole lot like the traditional inputs that people think of as being driver's cars from BMW, like good steering, good pedal feel, good X, Y, and Z. That doesn't exist anymore because it's all been filtered out.
Yeah.
But the good driving dynamics that BMW still spends money on, unlike brands like Genesis, and I would argue even Lexus and the ES and the IS don't match this car. That's what this does well. If you want to drive this thing like an asshole, put this into sport, we're in an M model with a diff, adaptive dampers, it firms up, and you get, near sports car levels of, let's call it, driving dynamics. It handles well, the front end turns in, you can get a little movement out of the rear even with this 4-cylinder. The gearbox is great, the engine goods, even in this 4-cylinder, guys, good power, good torque, 0 to 60 in the low to mid-5s. Does everything exceptionally well.
Yeah, and clearly you don't have to have the M Sport model, so you lose this is firm, obviously, even in comfort. So if you don't want that, that's not there. But what this does better than the competitors, and you mentioned a lot of cars. You mentioned IS, you mentioned the TLX, which you didn't mention, the Audi equivalents. Because this architecture is rear-wheel drive first, and like you said, it's got a real diff, it's got a great transmission, so it delivers all of the things that you want from a car that drives well that the other manufacturers still don't spend a lot of money on. And the argument becomes people don't care about good driving dynamics. We hear it all the time. They would rather have everything else but that. So they would rather have better infotainment, better audio, more gimmicks on the inside. And I do think BMW's at a place that they still have all of the good underpinnings that make this enjoyable to drive, and they do have a lot of the gimmicks. They really do balance it well. Right. So, I mean, that's where this is standing out to me. And you said you'd rather have this over a TLX, which kind of surprises me.
I think that my problem with the TLX is, you can maybe argue the SH all-wheel drive in bad weather and in really tight stuff might get you in and out of corners better than a rear-wheel drive architecture. But the gimmick part, the infotainment part, the usability of the interior, I still think the 3 Series does it better. I may not like iDrive 8, but I still think it's much better than the stupid touchpad and the half-baked infotainment that the TLX has. And this has a ZF8 speed. I mean, it's a joke at this point on this channel how much we like BMW's drivetrain tuning.
They do have the best drivetrain tuning for sure.
But even with this 4-cylinder, it's way better than the 10-speed. In the Acura.
It is way better. So what about the IS? Because that's kind of like everybody's like, well, what about the IS? What about the IS? It's super reliable.
It's smaller than this. It feels about 10 years older than this too.
It does.
Reliability is great, and it's a car that no one buys 3 Series. They're lease cars. People buy ISs. If you're buying a car to keep around for 15 years, great. But if you're going to cycle in and out of cars every 3 to 5 years like most people, I don't really care that the car is going to be around for 15 years if I'm going to get rid of this thing.
I think you hit the key point. This is a total lease machine now. Not that BMWs are not lease machines to begin with, but there's no staying power to this car anymore. Nobody's like, oh man, I got to get a 3 Series. It's become like the luxury commodity car, and I guess it always has been, but even more so now. It has this sense of genericness to it that I guess maybe it didn't before. But it's just, it's a car that you kind of look at and it does everything well. It's a really good option if you're looking for a sedan. But at the same time, it's like there's so many other options now.
This is the safe choice, though.
Yeah, no, it is. It's definitely safe, for sure. I mean, that's where I'm going to leave my thoughts.
I think I'm with you on that one, Mark. There are a lot of options out here. This is sort of, I still think, the benchmark. There are things that other cars do better, and there's a lot of things other cars do much worse.
I think it lacks the character because it's so trying to do everything that the IS has a lot of character because it's got road presence. The TLX has amazing road presence for a sedan, but they don't match some of the driving character of this car. But I don't know. This is a really, really hard choice.
Yep. All right, with that, Mark, let's head into the final thoughts, sir.
Sounds good, Jack. Final thoughts on the BMW 330i. The things that I like about this car is because you have a 4-cylinder that makes, around 255 horsepower, the power is not really the thing. It's about the weight of this car. And one of the things I really liked about the Z4 and like even the 1 Series is the lightness in the front end. Okay, you're buying BMWs to lease them, and you're buying them because you like some of the things that it does in terms of driving dynamics compared to the other cars. The other thing that the pro of this 330, even with the facelift, is they haven't fucked up the front end, right? It still looks like a normal sedan. And while that could be a negative, I'll be honest, if you're not driving and you don't care about driving, pushing it past like the 710s or at the limit, and you just want good handling, you want good styling, decent drivetrain, I think there's better cars. I think the G70 in some cases has way more character. The TLX has way more character. So there's that to look at. The other thing is I think the 4-cylinder does a pretty good job here in terms of fuel economy. We're getting a little bit over 30 miles per gallon if you're driving it normal. And the big selling point of this car compared to its competitors is drivetrain tuning. We beat it to death in the drive. Engine and transmission tuning is probably the best in its segment. So again, like, what do you want? Do you want a couch on wheels that's going to last forever that you don't want to lease? You get a Lexus ES. It's not about handling. It's about longevity and comfort and quietness. If you want good driving dynamics, there's this. And somewhere in there is like the G70. But, I don't know. This is a tricky segment because most of the American culture is like, if I'm going to spend 50 grand, I want more than just the sedan. I want more space. I want it to be bigger, and that's why people are going to the X1 and X3 over this now, and that's every brand. Everybody wants an SUV, at least in the United States. I'll let you decide what's important to you. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next video.
Hey ladies, my name is Jack B58. While you desecrate the subscribe digital button on YouTube, I wanted to discuss a very important topic. The B58 twin-power turbo inline 6-cylinder. This engine is tuned by the gods at BMW's M division and is the latest iteration of BMW's iconic 6-cylinder family, which produces a salivating 382 horsepower at 6,500 revolutions per minute. Performance and efficiency are not mutually exclusive, as this 6-cylinder version of BMW's modular family of engines allows for scintillating acceleration, 0 to 60 miles per hour in 4.1 seconds, while still returning 30 mpg highway. I could buy a townhouse for sport to store my B58 collection. I'd invite you over, but I don't want to create issues with you and your spouse. I'm low-key, hung with spec sheets on the bore and stroke and bearing clearances on M motors. I use spent oil samples to season my cast iron pans. I only buy my steaks at Walmart, frozen, and bring them back to life in the microwave. I eat my meat. Oh, well done, champ. You want to talk about protein? Join the club.